Okay, welcome to this edition of Fly Tying, the Angler's Art. So we're going to be tying a blue wing olive up tonight. I'm going to be using a size 18 hook. This is a Tiemco 101 straight shank, pretty standard hook, dry fly hook. So it's a simple fly. We're going to use CDC for the wing. This is a dun, medium dun color, so it's kind of a dark gray. It's real soft, light feather. It floats pretty well. Not quite as high as like a deer hair fly will, but works really good for like an emerger. Trout seem to love it. We're going to be using a olive dubbing. This is kind of a super fine dubbing. It's got some different color variation in here. It's kind of got some browns and dark green, light green. It's kind of good to get that spectrumized type color. For the tail, this is a marmot fur, and I'm going to actually be using the under fur from this pelt. Kind of opposite from how you tie deer hair. I'm going to actually pull the guard hairs out and use the kind of soft under fur for the tail. So that's it. 3 materials, pretty simple, easy to tie. Okay, so we'll start by putting on some thread. Get some wraps on there. And trim this little tag. I'm going to cover the shank with the thread. Do this for all flies I tie. Kind of makes them more durable. Helps so the materials won't spin around. Kind of get that back up. So we'll start with the tail. Start with this marmot under fur. I'm going to trim off just a little bit. Don't want to use too much of this. So marmot is kind of a hard material to find. You're not going to find it at your fly shops. You're going to need to know some kind of crazy hunter that specializes in marmots. So if you can't find it, I would look for Antron or Zelon, which are synthetic alternatives, very similar. They got kind of that crinkly look to it, shiny, and they're used for most flies as tails. So I got a nice little clump of this, not too much. I kind of like to leave it sparse. I like this stuff because it floats well and it's got a nice taper to it. And what you're doing is you're actually imitating the shuck of a mayfly. So as a mayfly hatches from an adult from a nymph to an adult, it'll shed its nymph shuck, sprout its wings, and fly. And sometimes they kind of get stuck in between those stages, and a shuck will kind of be hanging off the body, and the fish kind of key in on them because they're vulnerable. So that's what we're kind of imitating here with this marmot fur. So I'm going to tie it in. I'm actually going to measure it to the size of the shank. Going to move that back and pinch it with my other hand, and then just tie that down. And I'm going to move back to right where the hook starts to bend. Right before that is where I'm going to tie that tail to. It's pretty typical of a lot of dry flies. With a straight shank, you tie the tail right before the bend. So I got that tied in. So next step, I'm going to tie in my wing. And I'm going to be using this gray CDC. So I got a couple loose ones out already. So for an size 18 hook, I'm going to use 2 feathers. Size 12 or 14, a bigger hook, I might use 3. Size 20 to 22, I'd probably use just 1. So I'm going to match the tips of these feathers up, just like that. And pinch them together. I'm going to tie this forward on the hook and then prop it up. You could probably tie it back and prop it forward, either way. I like to do it this way because if you tie the wing forward and prop it up a little bit, it'll actually help the fly to kind of sit down in the water more, so it kind of looks more like an emerging bug, so it's not riding too high on the surface of the water. It's actually kind of riding low in the surface film. So I tied a couple of wraps behind the wing and then a couple in front to kind of prop it up, just like so. And then I'm going to trim this off, the remainder of the CDC, kind of tight to the wing, and get rid of that. So I got a little poof there now behind, and I'm just going to tie that down, and that'll help kind of create a little taper to the body. So I'm going to work back down, kind of tie back up that. And okay, so we got the tail in, we got the wing. So the last step is just going to be to dub that body up. So I'm going to get a pinch of this olive dubbing, and sometimes it helps. Your thread, you'll notice, spins a lot. Sometimes it'll help to spin it back in the direction that it wasn't spinning, kind of even it out so it's not too tight. Actually, it might have been, I don't even know which way it was spinning, but it's a nice little trick so it doesn't wind up on you too much. So I'm going to pull a little thread out, and I'm going to wet my finger, and that'll help kind of get that dubbing on nice and good. And in one hand I pinch it, in the other hand I'm just going to pull these fibers off and spin them onto the thread. Spin it in the same direction consistently, and don't apply too much. You want to leave this real thin on the thread so you can, wrap as much as you want on. But if you put it too thick on that thread, you're going to wind up with a body that looks all lumpy and unnatural. So less is more with dubbing and with most things. So I got a nice little dubbing strand there going up the thread, and I'm going to start that up the body. And I just like to give this a tap with my index finger here. It'll help it kind of tighten up on there as I'm working up the body, kind of giving it a taper. And now when I reach the wing, I'm going to go in front of it for a couple wraps, come back behind it again, and just like that. So I got a nice taper to the body, a little bit of a bump near the thorax here, and that's it. I'm going to tie it off, give it two double or two triple whip finishes. So 1, 2, 3, pull that out, and do that one more time. That'll keep that fly nice and durable. That head won't come off. And that's it. Trim my thread off, and there you have it. So that is a CDC wing, blue wing olive, with a marmot tail. It's real similar to a sparkle dun, which is a real popular fly. This one will sit a little bit lower in the water, and it's got just a real buggy looking appearance to it with the dubbing and this kind of fluffy little marmot tail and the soft gray CDC wing. It's a killer fly. Go out and catch some fish.